Good day, grade 11, and welcome to our virtual tourism classroom. My name is Penny Folklore. I'm a tourism teacher in the Nelson Mandela Bay District, and I'm responsible for presenting this lesson on South African cultural uniqueness today. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the role played by Erika Ferreira, who is the tourism subject advisor for Nelson Mandela Bay Zone 1. Erika has compiled all of the PowerPoints that we've been using in the virtual tourism classroom. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Eastern Cape Department of Education, the E-Teaching and Learning Directorate, who have made this possible. If we take a look at the curriculum, then you will see that the extract from your curriculum is up on the screen now. We are looking at South African cultural uniqueness. We are focusing on the tourism importance of the culture in our own province. Therefore, we will only be focusing on tourism cultures in the Eastern Cape. So you will see there's some of the information in that first bullet that is not really relevant to us, but as I said, we'll be focusing specifically on the Eastern Cape. And then the second bullet, if you take a look at that, you'll see how cultural uniqueness and diversity in South Africa can promote inbound and domestic tourism. As has become the habit, with these lessons, we always start with certain concepts. And today we start with the concept of cultural uniqueness and cultural diversity. Now, if you look at your screen, you'll see there is the definition of cultural uniqueness. Let us read it together. The cultural experience on offer is specific to the area and cannot be experienced elsewhere. So the predominant culture in the Eastern Cape is that of the Xhosa people. So what that definition is then telling us that cultural experience of the Xhosa people is specific to the Eastern Cape and cannot be experienced elsewhere. The following concept that is on your screen at the moment, you will see is cultural diversity. And again, let's just read it together. The existence of a variety of cultural or ethnic groups within a society. The existence of a variety of cultural or ethnic groups within a society. Now, I'm sure you are aware that in South Africa we have 11 official languages. Each of these are linked to a specific cultural group. And you see on the screen you have Pedis and Tsongas and Tswanas. You also have Ndebele people, Vendas and Sotho people, and that is just to name a few. So by taking a look at that, you can see that there is a lot on offer for tourists, whether they be domestic tourists or whether they be international tourists, but there's certainly a lot on offer for tourists that are visiting South Africa to experience the cultural uniqueness and the cultural diversity. Specific aspects that we will be looking at with regard to the Xhosa culture are on the screen at the moment, starting with arts and crafts, thereafter customs and practices, cuisine. Now, another word for cuisine is food, dress, folklore, music and dance. We'll also take a look at cultural villages, traditional leaders, and traditional medicine and healing. So those are the various aspects that we will be paying special attention to when we look at the Xhosa culture of the Eastern Cape. If we start with arts and crafts, you can see that There are a number of arts and crafts that can be bought by tourists when visiting the Eastern Cape, or can be seen or can be enjoyed by the tourists. You'll see that we have beadwork, traditional clothing. If you take a look at your right-hand side of your screen, you will see the lovely traditional Xhosa woman's outfit in that image. Alongside that, there is a variety of beadwork. Then we have arm and ankle bracelets, beautiful clay pots, wooden smoking pipes, and if you take a look at the pipes, you'll see that they have beads on them. There's also baskets and woven mats, wooden sculptures, and a variety of traditional weapons. So those are all examples of items that tourists would be interested in viewing and also purchasing when paying a visit to the Eastern Cape. And the next thing we look at, grade 11, is customs or practices. Now, we're not going to look at too many customs or practices. We're going to look at Lobola and initiation. So if we start with the custom of Lobola, cattle form part of the Xhosa custom of Lobola, whereby the man compensates the family of his fiancée for her hand in marriage by giving cattle. And if you take a look at the right-hand side of your screen, you can see there are a number of people having a good look at those beasts in the front of the image. So they are taking a good look at the cattle that are going to be given as Lobola. Now, in modern times, Lobola is most often paid in monetary value, and that monetary value is equivalent to the value of the cattle. So instead of giving 10 cows, they will give the monetary value for those 10 cows. Just as a matter of interest, when Nelson Mandela got married to Graça Machel, he paid 60 cattle for the right to marry Graça Machel. It's just something of interest. And I think you can realize the value of Graça Machel at being given 60 cattle. The next custom that we'll have a look at is the practice of initiation. The initiation ceremonies held for boys when they become men, and these are practiced amongst most Xhosa groups. If you look at the right-hand side of your screen, you will see there you have the abakweta, initiates, and those young men are taught about Xhosa traditions. They are also taught how to behave as men, and there is also circumcision that takes place as a key procedure in the initiation ceremony. I just want you to draw your attention to the white clay put on the faces of those young men. I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. So I just want to draw your attention to that. Then we're going to look at the cuisine that is most prominent amongst the Xhosa people. This would be very popular with tourists if they would perhaps be visiting a Xhosa cultural village, or even a tavern in a village, or even in a township area, that these foods would be on offer. Now, I just want to tell you right from the start, it's not necessary that you are able to pronounce and spell each and every Xhosa word that we are going to go through when we look at the cuisine. but I would suggest that you do know what the ingredients of the meal are. If you take a look at the right-hand side of your screen, you will see that the first cuisine that is listed there is umngqusho. Now, umngqusho, samp and beans, and the image of that is on the left-hand side of your screen, the top left image. That is umngqusho, which is a mixture of samp and beans. We also have umqombothi. Now, umqombothi is sorghum beer, and that you will see next to the image of the umngqusho in those various pots that you can see in the image. You also have Xhosa bread, another type of cuisine that is popular amongst the Xhosa people, umphokoqo. Now, umphokoqo, you will see bottom left-hand side of the screen. That is a mixture of maize, cooked maize, with sour milk. Isopo is corn soup. Imithwane is pumpkin leaf and a mixture of butter. And ilaqa, a pumpkin leaf cooked together with fresh pumpkin. So there you see various delights that are on offer for any tourist that would like to visit a cultural village or have a meal at a tavern. And those are all very traditional examples of Xhosa cuisine. If we take a look at the following aspect that we are going to be studying today, and that is the dress of the Xhosa woman. If you take a look at those two lovely ladies on the right-hand side of your screen in their beautiful traditional attire, you'll see, if I read the description to you, traditional women's clothing includes dresses in bright colors. You could have orange, green, red and white, any variety of those, and in particular amongst the Xhosa people, orange is very popular. The dresses have braiding and beads, and then there's also a skirt that is worn over the top of that. If you look at the headdress that those two ladies have on, that is a colorful braided turban known as iqiya. The Xhosa people are also known for their beautiful beadwork, and if you take a look at the images that you will see there on the right-hand side of your screen, there's some lovely example of long necklaces and collars made of multicolored beads. Now, the beadwork here forms an important part of the women's traditional clothing. Sometimes they wear long necklaces made from beads, which is the left-hand side example of beadwork on the screen, or the right-hand side one, the far right-hand side top image is one of multicolored collar that is worn around the neck. And a lot of ladies also wear beaded arm and ankle bracelets. Now, traditionally, the women's clothing and the ornaments that they wear with those items of clothing show the various stages of their lives. If we take a look at the men's clothing, traditionally you have Xhosa men that wear a covering around their waist and a short cloak. Now, that short cloak can either be made from animal skin, or it can be made from, it could perhaps sometimes be a blanket. You'll find that Xhosa men traditionally also wore sandals made from animal skin. And the following bullet, I just want to draw your attention to the image that we saw of the Abakweta a little bit earlier in this lesson with the white clay on their faces. During initiation, the Xhosa boys whiten their bodies and they wear a blanket or a sheepskin to ward off evil. And if you go back to that image that I said that you must keep in your mind, there you saw that they have white clay on their bodies and are also covered in blankets or could perhaps be sheepskin. Then we take a look at folklore. Now, before we continue into the various examples of Xhosa folklore, let's just have a look at an explanation of the term folklore. The traditional beliefs, customs, myths, and stories of a community, passed through the generations by a word of mouth. Let's read it again. The traditional beliefs, customs, myths, and stories of a community, passed through the generations by a word of mouth. Now, word of mouth means that it is not necessarily written down, but it is told from generation to generation. Now, your Xhosa tradition is very rich in creative verbal expression. Some examples that you will find amongst the Xhosa people are Intsomi, which is various folk tales, some proverbs, Izibongo are praise poems, and those Izibongo are told in very dramatic and creative ways. And the person that is responsible for carrying out that Izibongo, the praise poem, is called an Imbongi, and that is a praise singer. And that person plays a very important cultural role and will be given the role of singing a praise song for a prominent member of the community, be it a chief, be it somebody that is important. And before that person is going to appear or speak, an Imbongi will do a praise poem for that person. Then we have music and dance. This is very popular amongst visitors to the Eastern Cape. Xhosa traditional music places a strong emphasis on group singing and hand clapping as accompaniment to dance. So you have amongst the Xhosa people singing in groups and at the same time a lot of hand clapping. You will also find that drums are sometimes used, and other instruments amongst the Xhosa people are rattles. That rattle in that case would be some sort of a container that has things inside it or tied onto it that make a rattling noise and would be tied around the foot of somebody and makes a noise when that person stamps or shakes that foot. You also have whistles, flutes, and mouth harps. Now we get to cultural villages. And a cultural village day trip or a homestay is a fantastic experience and a fantastic opportunity that provides tourists with original and memorable experiences because they interact with the local villages. So what a cultural village day trip would entail is visiting a cultural village for a day or a number of hours and spending time there and experiencing the real way in which traditional life happens in the village. A homestay, on the other hand, is literally that, where the person or the tourist goes and stays in the cultural village and interacts with the people and experiences daily life in the cultural village. Now just take a look at the images on the right-hand side of your screen. The bottom one, you will see a number of young ladies who have gone to collect firewood as part of their day trip or homestay. And in the image directly above that, you have young ladies taking part in traditional dancing that they are being taught by members of the local community. Now, these visits allow tourists to experience the Xhosa culture, their way of life, traditional music. They can sample local dishes and beverages, as well as purchase any number of arts and crafts that are on offer. If you take a look at the bottom left-hand side of your screen, you will see that there are a number of examples of Xhosa cultural villages that are available for visits for tourists coming to the Eastern Cape. The first one is the Xhosa Cultural Village, located near Keiskamahuk. Ikaya Labantu Cultural Village is near East London. Mgwali Village near Stutterheim. And Isinamava Cultural Village, that is located close to Mount Frere. Now we have the traditional leaders in the Xhosa community that we are going to spend a little bit of time studying. Firstly, you must understand the concept of a traditional leader. They are regarded as community leaders and are symbols of unity in the community. It is essential that the traditional leaders in any specific community are consulted before anything happens in their community or before any changes to their position are made. Because, as I have already said, they play a very important role in the development in communities and regions. Now, if I could just draw your attention to the images on the left-hand side of the screen. The top image is that of the King Chudan Damase, and directly below that, that is Mandla Mandela, who is the grandson of Utatu Madiba, and he is a tribal chief at Mvezo. Another aspect that could be looked at under the bullet of, or the heading of traditional leaders, is that of the famous political figures that have originated, or the birthplace, their birthplace was in the Eastern Cape. If you take a look at the list of esteemed people on the bottom of your screen, Nelson Mandela, Robert Sobukwe, Steve Biko, Chris Hani, Govan and Thabo Mbeki, as well as Oliver Tambo. So all of those well-known political figures actually were born in the Eastern Cape. Then we take a look at traditional medicine and healing. We have amongst the Xhosa people diviners and healers. You will see the word on the screen there, Sangoma. These people are important in the spiritual life as well as to the health of the Xhosa people. They are the living link between the Xhosa people and their ancestors, Iznyanya. You will also find that Sangomas practice traditional African medicine. Now, you may have people who are sick. that also visit a traditional Xhosa herbalist known as Iqwele or Amaqwele, and that Iqwele will give the person perhaps a mixture of bark, roots and herbs, all sorts of natural remedies to assist with the healing process. If you take a look at the images on the right hand side, you will see on the top right hand side image there is a lot of natural products, bark, roots, herbs that can be used to heal a person. And then the other two images are of healers or sangomas or perhaps amaqwele herbalists that the people would be visiting. You'll also notice the very characteristic type of clothing that these people are wearing. Now, grade 11, we look at the tourism importance of the culture in the Eastern Cape that attracts tourists to South Africa. More specifically, we will be looking at historical sites and buildings, as well as arts festivals that take place in the Eastern Cape. Historical sites and buildings, and please, grade 11, let me just remind you here, these are not the only historical sites and buildings in the Eastern Cape. There are many, many, many of these sites and buildings. But for the purposes of this lesson, we had to limit the selection. So today's lesson mentions the Albany Museum. Now that is located in Makhanda. Makhanda is the town formerly known as Grahamstown. The Albany Museum was established in 1855 and is the second oldest museum in South Africa. And that is the image on the right-hand side at the top of your screen. The second image is that at the bottom of your screen is that of the Nelson Mandela Museum. And visitors to the Nelson Mandela Museum can take a journey through the life of Nelson Mandela. Another interesting fact here is that the Nelson Mandela Museum is located in 3 historical sites. There is a site in Umtata, there's a site at Mvezo, and there is one at Qunu. If we continue with the historical sites and buildings, we have Route 67 in Nelson Mandela Bay's Central Business District. Now that is an art and heritage walk, and that art and heritage walk includes 67 public art pieces by 67 different local Eastern Cape artists. You will see there, grade 11, that the number 67 comes up 3 times in that bullet. It's Route 67. There are 67 public art pieces by 67 different local Eastern Cape artists. Now, I'm just wondering if you know the significance of the 67 there. That refers specifically to 67 years of work that Mandela dedicated to the freedom of South Africa. Now, that walk, Route 67, tells the story of Port Elizabeth's rich heritage, which be both colonial as well as the history of Utatu Matiba. The artworks that you see there include the voting line sculpture at the Donkin Reserve, and I'd like to draw your attention to the right-hand side of your screen. There you see the bottom image. There you have the voting line sculpture, which represents when the first democratic election was held in South Africa, way back in 1994, and during that time a lot of people were queuing up to vote in the general election that was held at that time, and hence the name Voting Line Sculpture. We have another historical site and building located in New Bethesda, which is near Graafrenet in the Eastern Cape, and the name of that site or building is the Owl House. Now, the Owl House is a museum that displays concrete and glass animals. Again, please have a look at the images on the right-hand side of your screen. You will see a number of owls there, but it is not only owls that you will find at the Owl House. The extreme right-hand side images, both top and bottom, have a variety of other concrete animals and people. The artist, again, just as a matter of interest, the artist that is responsible for these sculptures is a lady by the name of Helen Martins. When we take a look at arts festivals, now the most well-known arts festival in South Africa is the National Arts Festival, and is hosted in the town of Makhanda in the Eastern Cape. As I said earlier, Makhanda was formerly known as Grahamstown, and that festival is the largest celebration of culture and the arts on the African continent. It runs for 11 days during June and July, and there is so much on offer there, anything from theatre to dance, opera to cabaret, fine art to craft art, classical music to jazz, poetry readings to lectures. So you essentially have every art form imaginable that is represented in this arts festival, which is certainly one of the most diverse arts festivals in the world. You also have a lot of informal traders that have stalls in Makhanda at the time of the festival. So it's good for the economy of the people in the area. And then also you will find a number of buskers that stand and sing or perform some sort of a production on the street corners. A busker is perhaps a person that would play a guitar and sing, and he or she would have a hat out in front of them, and you could watch their performance and put some money into the hat for them. So you certainly, when visiting Makhanda and going to the National Arts Festival, will find a variety of buskers that are also doing shows, and that is not only shows that are on the mainstream of the festival. Then we will take a look at how cultural uniqueness and diversity in South Africa can promote inbound and outbound tourism. Just to take you back there to the words on the screen, cultural uniqueness and cultural diversity. Those were the two concepts that we focused on right at the beginning of this lesson. If we first focus on inbound tourism, our cultural uniqueness and diversity are particularly important in attracting inbound tourists. Now that means tourists from other countries coming to South Africa. International tourists have a keen interest in visiting South Africa since it is home to very diverse cultures that have developed their own unique and distinctive music, cuisine, art forms, and traditional rituals. symbolizing their values and their beliefs. Now, if you take a look at the images on the screen at the top, you will see specifically, I want to refer you to Lesedi Cultural Village, which is a multicultural village close to Johannesburg and has a variety of experiences on offer for both international and domestic tourists, and each experience is that of a different culture grouping in South Africa. So you would have a Xhosa section of Lesedi, you would have a Zulu section, you would have a section where you will be able to experience the Ndebele people. And you will also see that South Africa has certain unique cultural practices that tourists can only find in this country, and that is a huge draw card for international tourists coming to South Africa to experience the Southern African cultures that can only be found in this southernmost point of Africa. If we look at domestic tourism, you will see that one of the main motivators of domestic travel is to attend some sort of cultural festival within the borders of South Africa. Examples are up on the screen. Matufe African Cultural Festival on the left-hand side, Cape Town International Jazz Festival, even the National Arts Festival in Makhanda are all examples of cultural festivals. You also, of course, have the Short Left campaign, which encouraged South Africans to become curious and interested in each other's cultures and heritage. And this has promoted domestic tourism, but at the same time has helped to reduce seasonality in the domestic tourism market. Now, if I could just take you back to the lesson on domestic tourism, we spoke about the domestic tourism growth strategy, and we also mentioned that one of the aims was to reduce seasonality. So that means that people are not always traveling within one season. They can go and attend cultural festivals during various times of the year. Right, grade 11, we're now going to take a look at an activity just to see how these are asked. This topic is asked. Can I just interrupt myself here quickly? I just want to make sure that you understand that when you have questions based on culture and heritage, you are most often required to apply your knowledge. You will find that you will be given a scenario or a case study, and yes, you will be given basic content questions. For example, what is the main ingredients of ngqusho, or something along those lines, but you will also be required to apply your knowledge to the questions that are based on the scenario or the case study that is given. Now here you have an extract from the November 2018 Eastern Cape examination question paper, and here is an excellent example of what I was just saying to you. We're going to study the information and answer the questions. If we take a look at the extract that is given, it is from Imonti Tours, and just below the images you will see Xhosa Experience Cultural Tour. This tour takes you to a living village where you will learn about Xhosa culture and traditions. And then there are certain pertinent details given to you there. Firstly, the highlights, which are traditional dancing and singing, storytelling, local craft, as well as traditional meals. Rates are also given. You'll see from 420 Rand per person, and the duration of the cultural tour is approximately 4 hours. Now, we have the first question that reads, the Xhosa Experience Cultural Tour of Imonti Tours introduces tourists to the cultural uniqueness of the Eastern Cape. Suggest 2 examples of Xhosa cuisine that tourists will be able to sample while on the tour. Now, you should be able to answer that without any hesitation, because we took a look at the different examples of Xhosa cuisine a couple of slides earlier. But there you have the answers coming up on the screen at the moment. Ngqusho, which is samp and beans. Mqombothi, which is sorghum beer. Mphokoqo, maize mixed with sour milk. You also have Xhosa bread. And that is definitely not all. There are certainly many more examples of cuisine that are available. Suggest 2 types of local Xhosa crafts that tourists will be able to buy as souvenirs. Now, if you go back to right at the beginning of the lesson when we looked at the arts and crafts, suggest 2 types of local Xhosa crafts that tourists will be able to buy. There you have just some examples on the list: beadwork, traditional clothing, arm and ankle bracelets, as well as clay pots. The following question: explain your understanding of the concept cultural uniqueness. Remember, when you are required to explain, you must write full sentences, and you cannot just give bullets. You must give the full sentence and an explanation of the term cultural uniqueness. There you have it on your screen. The cultural experience on offer is specific to the area and cannot be experienced elsewhere. Then the last question, and with that we'll finish up with today's lesson. Discuss 2 ways how the Xhosa Experience Cultural Tour offered by Imonti Tours contributes to the promotion of inbound tourism. What are we looking at here? 2 ways how the Xhosa Experience Cultural Tour contributes to the promotion of inbound tourism. There you have the correct responses on the board, on your screen at the moment. The tour provides tourists with original and memorable experiences through interaction with local villages. And secondly, it allows tourists to experience the Xhosa culture, their way of life, and to discover food and customs. Now, if you take a look at the extract on the left-hand side of your image, you will see, yes, they do have highlights, dancing and singing, which is traditional storytelling, local craft, traditional meals, but also take a little bit of time out to look at the images given on the top of that, or above that specific extract. You will see that there are ladies dancing. You will see that people are spending some time in the Xhosa community, as it were. So that if when asked how the Xhosa Experience Cultural Tour offered, you can see that it's not only the content that you can have studied that you can give back to your teacher or the person marking your question paper. It's also about interpreting the images that are given on the screen or in your question paper. All right, grade 11, thank you for being with us today. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. I hope that you have learned something, and I hope to see you in the following lesson. Wish you well. Goodbye.